Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. The Whispering Walls. Emily Stevens had always considered herself a lover of solitude. She enjoyed the quiet moments when the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the soft rustle of leaves or the gentle hum of her own thoughts. So, when she stumbled upon the listing for a secluded Airbnb cabin deep in the woods, it felt like fate. A weekend away from the noise of the city, deadlines, and social obligations. It was exactly what she needed. The pictures of the cabin were enchanting. A cozy, rustic retreat with a stone fireplace, large bay windows overlooking the forest, and a wraparound porch adorned with string lights. The host's description painted it as a place where peace meets nature, and Emily was sold. She booked it immediately, imagining herself curled up with a book by the fire, the world's chaos kept at bay by the sturdy wooden walls. When she arrived, the cabin was exactly as advertised, almost too perfect. The gravel driveway crunched under her tires as she pulled up, and the dense forest loomed around her, casting long shadows in the late afternoon light. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy scent of pine and moss. Emily felt a shiver of anticipation, the kind that comes from stepping into a dream made real. But as she approached the cabin, a strange feeling washed over her. It wasn't fear, exactly, but a subtle unease, like she was being watched. She shook it off. Just the isolation, she muttered to herself, grabbing her bags and heading inside. The interior was charming, with its vintage furniture and the faint smell of cedar. The host had left a welcome note and a basket of snacks on the kitchen counter. Everything seemed perfect, at least at first. That evening, Emily settled in with a glass of wine and her favorite mystery novel. The fire crackled warmly in the hearth, and the only sounds were the occasional hoot of an owl or the wind rustling through the trees. She felt her shoulders relax for the first time in weeks. It was around midnight when she heard it, a faint whisper. At first, she thought it was the wind, but the sound was too deliberate, too human. She froze, her heart pounding. The whisper seemed to come from the walls, soft and indistinct. She strained to listen, but couldn't make out any words. After a few moments, it stopped. "You're just tired," she told herself, forcing a laugh to dispel the unease. She went to bed, trying to convince herself it was nothing. The next day passed uneventfully. Emily went for a hike, took photos of the breathtaking scenery, and even managed to finish her book. By evening, she had almost forgotten about the whispers. But as darkness fell, the unease returned. The cabin felt colder, the shadows deeper. She built another fire and tried to distract herself with a new book, but her eyes kept darting to the corners of the room. The whispers started again, louder this time. They came from the walls, soft and insistent. Emily's pulse quickened as she realized they weren't random sounds. They were words. "Leave now," a voice hissed. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She stood up, her hands trembling. The whispers continued, overlapping and growing more frantic. "They're watching. Get out." She bolted to the kitchen and grabbed her phone, dialing the host. The line rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. "Hi, Emily. Is everything okay?" "No," Emily said, her voice shaky. There's something wrong with the cabin. I keep hearing whispers in the walls." The host laughed lightly, as if Emily had told a joke. "Oh, that's just the old wood settling. It's an old cabin, you know. Nothing to worry about." Emily wanted to argue, but stopped herself. What could she say? That the whispers were forming sentences? She ended the call, feeling more alone than ever. Determined to prove she wasn't losing her mind, Emily began searching the cabin. She tapped on the walls, listening for hollow spots, and checked behind furniture. Hours passed, and she found nothing. Exhausted, she slumped onto the couch, her eyes scanning the room for answers. That's when she noticed it, a small, uneven gap in the baseboard near the fireplace. Her stomach tightened as she crawled over to inspect it. With trembling hands, she pried the board loose, revealing a dark crawl space. Inside was a dusty old recorder. Emily's heart raced as she picked it up and pressed play. A chilling voice crackled through the speaker, repeating the same phrases she'd heard. "Leave now. They're watching." Her breath came in short gasps. Who would leave this here? And why? She called the host again, her voice laced with panic. "I found a recorder in the wall. It's playing the whispers I've been hearing. What the hell is going on?" There was a long pause before the host sighed. "I was hoping you wouldn't find that." Emily's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "A previous guest left it," the host admitted. "They were eccentric, always talking about people watching them, hearing voices. When they disappeared, we found the recorder and sealed it up. We didn't want to scare future guests." "Disappeared?" Emily's voice cracked. "What happened to them?" "We don't know," the host said quietly. "They left all their belongings behind and were never seen again." Emily's hands shook as she ended the call. She grabbed her bags and threw them into her car, desperate to leave. As she walked to her car, the forest seemed darker, the trees pressing in like silent sentinels. She climbed into the driver's seat and locked the doors, her heart hammering in her chest. That's when she saw it, a note tucked under her windshield wiper. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. Scrawled in jagged handwriting were two words: "You're next." Emily didn't wait to think. She started the car and sped down the gravel road, the cabin disappearing in her rearview mirror. But even as she put miles between herself and the cursed place, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was still watching her. Weeks later, the cabin listing vanished from the Airbnb website. Emily tried to forget what had happened, but every so often, she'd wake in the middle of the night, sure she could hear faint whispers in the walls of her own apartment. No matter how far she ran, the terror of the cabin stayed with her, like an echo that refused to fade. Story 2. The Stranger in the Closet. Mark had always been the kind of guy who loved a good scare. Haunted houses? Sure. Ghost stories around the campfire? Absolutely. So when he and his friends stumbled upon an affordable Airbnb that looked like it came straight out of a horror movie, sprawling Victorian with creaky floors and ivy crawling up the walls, he couldn't resist. "This place is perfect," Mark said, slapping his best friend Jake on the back as they parked in the gravel driveway. Their other two friends, Lisa and Mia, stepped out of the car, equally impressed by the house's rustic charm. Inside, the house was surprisingly well maintained. Gleaming hardwood floors, a modern kitchen, and enough bedrooms for everyone to have their own. The host, a polite middle-aged man named Mr. Harmon, had left a note on the dining table. "Welcome. Make yourselves at home." Just a small note. "The closet in the upstairs bedroom is locked for storage. Please don't try to open it. Enjoy your stay." Mark waved it off. Locked closets are Airbnb 101. Probably just stuffed with cleaning supplies or something boring. The group settled in, cracking open beers and playing music as they unpacked. By the time night fell, they were lounging in the living room, laughing over an old horror movie. "This place does have a creepy vibe, though," Lisa said, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. "Like it's too quiet." "You're just spooked because it's an old house," Jake said. "Nothing's gonna happen." That night, Mark claimed the upstairs bedroom with a locked closet. He liked having a little mystery nearby, even if it was something as mundane as a storage closet. But as he drifted off to sleep, he heard it, a faint scratching sound. It was so soft at first that he thought he was imagining it. But then it came again, deliberate and insistent. Mark sat up, his heart thumping. The noise was definitely coming from the locked closet. "It's just a mouse," he muttered to himself, trying to sound convincing. Still, he grabbed a flashlight and inspected the base of the door. Nothing. The scratching stopped, and after a while, he went back to bed. The next morning, Jake came into the kitchen looking pale. "Hey, Mark, did you leave the closet door open last night?" Mark paused mid-sip of his coffee. "What? No. Why?" "Because it's open now." Mark's stomach churned as the two of them went upstairs. Sure enough, the closet door was slightly ajar. He hadn't touched it, and neither had anyone else, at least according to Lisa and Mia. Inside, the closet was empty except for a dusty old coat rack. "See? Nothing creepy," Jake said, though his voice wavered. Mark nodded, but he couldn't shake the unease curling in his gut. That night, the scratching returned. It was louder this time, almost frantic. Mark's nerves were on edge as he grabbed the flashlight again. But this time, the closet door wasn't locked. It was wide open. And the floor? It was covered in muddy footprints. Mark's breath hitched. He followed the prints into the hallway, where they stopped abruptly outside Mia's room. Heart pounding, he threw the door open. "What's going on?" Mia asked, startled awake. "The footprints," Mark stammered. "They lead to your door." But when Mia and the others joined him in the hallway, the footprints were gone. The group spent the rest of the night huddled in the living room, too scared to sleep. The next morning, things escalated. Lisa screamed from the bathroom, and everyone rushed to see what had happened. Scrawled across the fogged-up mirror in red lipstick were the words, "Get out, or I'll make you stay forever." Lisa's hands were shaking. "Who did this? This isn't funny." No one admitted to it. They decided to call Mr. Harmon, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Frantic, they packed their bags, abandoning their weekend plans. As they loaded the car, Mark glanced back at the house. For a moment, he thought he saw a shadowy figure standing in the upstairs window, watching them. They didn't stop driving until they were hours away. It wasn't until later that Jake did some digging online. What he found made Mark's blood run cold. The house had belonged to a recluse named Walter Greaves, who had disappeared years ago. Neighbors claimed he had a habit of hiding in the walls, spying on people who came too close. Rumor had it that his spirit still lingered, ensuring no one ever stayed long. Mark couldn't shake the feeling they had narrowly escaped something far worse, and he would never forget the final note in the listings reviews, a chilling message left by a previous guest. Don't stay here. The closet isn't empty. Story 3. The Phantom Host. The salt-kissed breeze from the ocean met Lila as she parked her car in the gravel driveway of the seaside cottage. It was charming in a postcard kind of way. Weathered shingles, white trim, and a picket fence that had seen better days. She'd been looking forward to this getaway for weeks. A chance to clear her head and write without the constant interruptions of her city life. The listing had promised serenity, and the photos made it look like a dream. When she knocked on the door, an elderly woman answered almost immediately, as if she'd been standing there waiting. She was petite, with silvery hair pinned neatly back and a warm smile that deepened the creases on her face. "You must be Lila," the woman said, her voice soft but cheery. "I'm Helen. Arthur's inside resting. Long day. You know how it is at our age." Lila offered a polite laugh and thanked her as Helen handed over the keys. "You'll find everything you need inside. There's tea in the cupboard and plenty of towels. If you have any questions, just give us a shout." She waved Lila off with a reassuring nod, and the door creaked shut behind her. As Lila entered the cottage, she was greeted by the smell of cedar wood and the faint tang of salt in the air. The interior was cozy, with well-worn furniture and a fireplace flanked by shelves of old books. A vase of fresh wildflowers sat on the coffee table, adding a touch of hominess. That first night, Lila felt at peace. She sat on the porch, listening to the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore, her notebook in hand. Ideas flowed easily, as if the sea itself were whispering inspiration to her. When she finally went to bed, the gentle sound of the surf lulled her into a deep, dreamless sleep. The second day was less idyllic. Lila woke to a strange smell, sharp and acrid, like burnt wood mixed with something metallic. She wrinkled her nose, trying to locate the source, but it seemed to come and go, dissipating as quickly as it appeared. Shrugging it off, she spent the day walking along the beach, collecting sea glass and snapping photos. By evening, the smell returned, stronger this time, accompanied by an unsettling chill that lingered even after she turned up the thermostat. It was then that she noticed the photograph. It sat on the mantel above the fireplace, a black and white image in a delicate silver frame. The couple in the picture was unmistakably Helen and Arthur, but they looked much younger. Helen's hair was dark, her face smooth and unlined, and Arthur stood tall beside her, his arm draped over her shoulders. Something about the picture, or perhaps its placement, sent a shiver down Lila's spine. Why hadn't she noticed it before? Curiosity gnawed at her. Lila sat on the couch, her laptop balanced on her knees, and began searching their names online. It didn't take long to find an article. The headline stopped her cold. Local couple perishes in tragic fire. Helen and Arthur Carter remembered by community. The date was from 2 years ago. Lila's heart raced as she skimmed the article. The fire had consumed the entire cottage, leaving nothing but ash and charred beams. The couple had been trapped inside, their bodies discovered by firefighters hours later. She stared at the screen, her mind struggling to reconcile the words with the friendly woman she'd met just yesterday. "This can't be right," she whispered to herself. She picked up her phone and dialed the Airbnb support line, her fingers trembling. When she explained the situation, the operator's voice was calm but firm. "The property is managed by a third-party company," they said. "There's no way the original owners could have interacted with you. Are you sure you met someone?" Lila's throat tightened. I'm positive. She gave me the keys and..." Her voice trailed off. "If you're feeling uncomfortable, we recommend leaving the property. We can arrange a refund." The call ended, but Lila couldn't shake the unease creeping over her. She walked to the small desk in the corner where a leather-bound guest book rested. Flipping through the pages, she found cheerful notes from past visitors, all praising the hospitality of Helen and Arthur. But the most recent entry made her blood run cold. "Thank you for a lovely stay. Helen and Arthur were wonderful hosts as always. March 15th, 24-inch. That date was just 3 days ago." A sudden crash shattered the silence. Lila jumped, spinning around to see the front door slam shut on its own. The air grew heavy, the temperature plummeting. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out, plunging the room into darkness. "Hello," she called, her voice barely above a whisper. Her only answer was the sound of footsteps creaking across the wooden floor, slow and deliberate. They stopped just behind her. Lila turned, clutching her phone like a lifeline, but no one was there. The room felt alive with a presence she couldn't see but could feel, an oppressive weight pressing down on her chest. She stumbled backward, her foot catching on the edge of the rug, and fell hard onto the floor. The smell of burning wood returned, choking her as she scrambled to her feet. In the faint glow of her phone screen, she saw the guest book's pages flipping on their own, as if an invisible hand were rifling through them. The final page stopped, blank at first. Then words appeared, scrawled in jagged letters. "You shouldn't have come." Panic overtook her. Lila grabbed her keys and bolted for the door, fumbling with the lock as the walls seemed to close in around her. She finally wrenched it open and ran to her car, not daring to look back. As she sped down the gravel road, tears streaming down her face, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The cottage was gone. In its place stood a charred, skeletal structure, blackened beams reaching toward the sky like the bones of a long-dead creature. The wildflowers, the porch, the cheerful facade, all of it had vanished, as if it had never been there at all. Lila didn't stop driving until she reached the nearest town, her hands still trembling as she recounted the story to the motel clerk. No one believed her, of course. The cottage had been abandoned for years, they said, but Lila knew what she'd seen, and she knew she'd never return to that cursed stretch of coast again.